Let's go to number 11, and it's our third team from the Pac-12 in this group of five. It's the Oregon Ducks.
Quack, quack.
Quack, quack, Mr. Ducksworth. So, which Oregon Duck team are we going to get this season? I keep asking myself that. When I was preparing for this, is it the team that went into Georgia and looked just so out of place, so inept? And then after the Georgia game, like, we kind of all wrote Oregon off for the year. And they wind up winning, 8 straight games? I think they went to
Yeah,
8-1.
I think we were
And then,
talking about early November that they could have even made the playoff.
right. And then that game versus Washington was just such a great back and forth game. Washington was a really good squad last year. And they were able to beat Utah and then losing to Oregon State to keep them out of the Pac-12 title game. And then beating North Carolina in the Holiday Bowl in a classic game with the old man and the young kid, Bo Nix versus Drake May. Fresh. Bo Nix back for his doctoral. I feel like we have too many quarterbacks on their doctoral years. This
Hey,
the
get
COVID year
get your
is messing it up.
get your degrees while you can, fellas. If you want to get your doctorate and have the funny hat and the cool little sashes, do what you got to do. I'm like
Right.
Stetson. Yeah, Stetson Bennett doesn't need a degree. He has a couple trophies, but you guys get your degrees.
Are you just instead of a Georgia alumni, is it like a Georgia attendee
Um, a, a participant.
participation trophy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Oregon going into this season here, though. Fresh. Bo Nix is back. You take a look at what they're returning. Bucky Irving is back. Knowing Winnington is back. Bucky Irving, 5 touchdowns, 1,000-yard rusher, 6.8 yards a carry. Knowing Winnington, again, over 700 yards, almost 800. He had 5 touchdowns. Bo Nix has got to run the ball a little bit less, though. I can't see Bo Nix getting 89 carries. And again, he did some good things with it, but he's got to be better. There was talk about Bo Nix being a Heisman candidate, but it's nice to see he wound up going back to what they thought he was going to be at Auburn, so he kind of redeemed himself. And he has a really great wide receiver in Troy Franklin. And I want to call him Clifford Franklin from The Replacements. Oh, you were the man, Clifford Franklin. You're hiding behind the jukebox. I love that. That's one of my favorite football movies. But
Oh
Troy,
yeah. If you haven't seen the replacements, he's a great character.
yeah, like, oh yeah, we were tough tonight. But kid's a 6'3" sophomore, man. This kid is a great target in the red zone. I think he's going to have a huge jump this season going into the year. Really, the question is, can they get better on defense though? Like they really at times, their defense was okay, you're all
I
right.
mean,
What are you gonna do?
yeah. I mean, Dan Lanning, you're brought there for defense.
Right.
It's no secret you when Lincoln Riley was hired at USC, you became a pretty hot candidate to take over the job at Oregon, and it was for one reason and one reason only: to shut down these offenses in the Pac-12.
Yeah. And they were next to last in the Pac-12 for sacks. They have to get better pressure on the quarterback. They really need to develop a better scheme with you'd say they ranked in the top 5 in the conference, but giving up 27 points a game, it's not going to cut it in the Pac-12, especially with this influx of quarterback play that we expect to see this year in the Pac-12. You got to be better at that point. Utah, you got to get to the quarterback. You got to get home. You also have to improve your pass defense. They're in middle of the pack, 260 yards a game. Quarterbacks, if you do not get better in your pass defense, quarterbacks are going to light you up this year, and you are looking at a 7-win, 8-win team. Interesting schedule for them. Week 2, traveling to Lubbock, Texas, and playing the Red Raiders. And then I love when Hawaii comes to the mainland and the Rainbow Warriors. I love it. I want them to bring back the old school Hawaii helmet
With
for a
with
game or two.
the old white helmets or the
Yeah, the all
black
white
ones.
helmets and the white ones.
Okay.
And I love all of the Hawaiian like stuff that they do, the all the Samoan where they do the thing when they come onto the field. I know our Samoan listener will probably correct me on what that is actually called, but I think that's awesome. If you've never seen how Hawaii enters into a football field, after you're done watching this, go on YouTube, check it out, look there. But then you got to travel to Washington, you got to travel to Utah, you get USC at home, end of the season, Oregon State. There's 5 solid games on here that it's going to be a coin flip. So I got them at the floor at 7-5. And the defense is really what scares me. I think the defense with the quarterback play, I'm going to max them out on 9 wins this year. I don't see them getting to the 10-win mark.
I mean, the first thing I, sort of looked at when I started this is Bo Nix. We need to remember there are 2 Bo Nixes. There's the really good Bo Nix, and then there's the really bad Bo Nix. We got a lot of good last year, Auburn years. We got a lot of bad Bo Nix. What are we going to get this year? His offensive coordinator, Kenny Dinningham, is now the head coach at Arizona State. So he thought he had comfort there, and now it's gone. How does he adapt to the new staff and the new offensive coordinator? I'm going forward to this year. That's going to be the biggest test. And you kind of mentioned some of those stats. So looking at defense, so you mentioned the yards given up. This is what I also kind of laugh at. They gave up 27.4 points a game. That's 4 touchdowns. That's 5th in the Pac-12. How many other teams are just giving up 30 and 40 points a game is ridiculous. That just shows you either there's a bunch of terrible defenses or a bunch of amazing offenses we're conquering. There has to be somewhere in the between. But you're giving up 4 touchdowns and you're in the top 5 defenses in points allowed. That's just a lot of bad defenses in the league. So your offense has got to be able to put up points and take advantage of those bad defenses if you have the chances. And looking at offense, 500 yards of total offense a game, 4th in the Pac-12. We talked about Washington, USC. You get 500 yards total offense, and you're 4th best in the league. Not in the nation, the league. That's how lethal these offenses are. So that's, again, is it bad defense? Is it really good offense? Somewhere in between. We'll see what happens this year. But that's going to be they got to keep that pace, and he has to do a little bit less running, trust his running backs, and throw the ball a bit more. Because if you want to go to the NFL, I think Bo Nix is trying. It's great to have your mobility, but to have a long career in the NFL, you've got to learn how to throw the football from the pocket. Mobile quarterbacks, they always come in the first 3 years, they do great, and they get beat up physically. No offense to Lamar Jackson, but there's a reason why he hasn't played 16 games the past 2 years. He runs a lot, but he gets hurt because he's out and getting exposed. You've got to learn how to throw from the pocket, and Bo Nix needs to do that this year to help his offense grow and also help him grow as a quarterback. And that might actually save this team down the stretch because if he's healthy, he plays. He was banged up at the end of the year last year, and that hurt them down the stretch, him not being on the field. He's got to keep himself healthy, and the offense and the team has got to remember, we've got to coach and we've got to play to keep him healthy as well. Cannot let him do too much that he puts himself in peril and gets knocked out for a couple plays or a game and costs him maybe an NFL career, maybe costs the team a win. Got to stay healthy, got to play smarter down the stretch. That early test at Texas Tech really, I think, is going to maybe one of the dark horse great games of that weekend. It's September 9th. It's going to be overshadowed by the Texas-Alabama game, obviously. But if you're in between commercials, switch over because they're going to be competing. Watch that football game. You're going to see a former Oregon quarterback, now most likely going to be the starter at Texas Tech, trying to get revenge against Oregon. He led them to in a bowl game and then got basically pushed out the door and he decided to transfer. Maybe he gets a little payback. It's going to be hot in Lubbock, Texas. How does Oregon come from the Pacific Northwest where normally it's historically cooler during the summer, coming down to the heat of West Texas? It's going to be an interesting football game. It's going to really test both those programs, see where we're at. And Dane Lanning, in the end, you had year one. You were successful. Now we're going to find out what the true rubber meets the road here. Are you actually a great head coach? You've had 2 classes of recruits coming in. You had a chance to really put your full staple on this program. It is yours truly from the identity perspective and the roster build, especially from the transfer portal. What can you actually do? Were you a one-hit wonder with a lot of great players from previous regimes, or did you actually build a team that can withstand and actually compete nationally and in the Pac-12? It's a big year for Dan Lanning and see if he can get outside of Kirby Smart's shadow and really show that he's also a worthy head coach and can actually win at a high level. That's what I want to see this year. The floor 7-5, and I think the ceiling 11-1 with their loss either to USC or Utah. So it's a big change up there, and if they struggle, they might become an outlier when it goes forward in the ever changing Pac-12, where this was the last year at USC and UCLA are there, and who knows how that profile and that footprint is going to be going forward.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if Dan Lanning can really continue the trend of them being successful. I go back to them, the defensive stat you gave, 27 points a game, 4 touchdowns. Colorado State was one of the worst teams in college football. They gave up less points per game. Michigan State had a very subpar year. The Buffalo Bulls had a better scoring defense. The Florida Atlantic Owls had a better one. Oh, okay. Well, they don't play really anybody. Sure. Like the Toledo Rockets, the Texas State Bobcats, people that are going to be paid money to get the bejesus kicked out of them, have better defense. Virginia Tech, who was god awful last year, had a better defense. New Mexico State had a better defense. Western Michigan, better defense. You're right, Fresh. This defense has got to be better. It can't fall on Bo Nix. The offense is there, but Dan Lanning's got to do something about this defense going forward, or they're just going to wind up in a couple of games where they may win 10 games, but if you come in and Michael Penix Jr. in October boat races you and just makes you guys look ugly in the middle of the season, and that ugly loss is at the beginning of the season, then no one's gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. You might be 11-1, win the Pac-12, but if you just have this ugly, ugly loss, or Caleb Williams comes into Eugene and lights up the scoreboard, again, ugly loss, Oregon's out of the playoff picture. They are on very thin ice with the view nationally. Like, Oregon is a very good football program. They've been a great football program under Cristobal. They are really good under Kelly and that crew right there. They had a lot of 10-win seasons. So you're playing with some house money, but sooner or later, if you don't correct some of these issues that we're seeing, you wind up being a team that kind of falls by the wayside, and the national conversation is no longer what it was about you. So I'm intrigued to see what Oregon does this year. Again, I think there's a lot of talent there. I told you I got 7 wins, but I got up there. I'll go with you and go 11 wins if everything comes together.
And it's funny how you brought up all the previous coaches. So like Brian Kelly, everyone kind of knows that offense. Chip Kelly, excuse me. That offense is wide open. He had Marcus Mariota there. It's speed on the field everywhere he touched. DeAnthony Thomas was lightning fast. They had tons of guys who could just fly around the field, but their defense was absolutely horrible. Mario Cristobal comes in. He brings a toughness to that program where we're going to run the ball. We're going to be a little more tough. Yeah, we have Justin Herbert, but we're going to be a tough football team defensively and offensively. But they lacked the overall consistency and explosion on offense. Can Dan Lanning find a way to blend those two different styles? Can you get a blazing speed on offense with a high speed attack and score, but also be tough? Can you find a way to blend those two styles that Oregon's kind of used in the past few years to be good nationally? That might actually be the key. You look at the great teams: Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, Clemson. The teams of the past have won titles. They've been a great balance of speed and toughness. It's not just we're going to be really, really fast and be horrible on defense, or we're going to have a really good defense and horrible on offense, or we're going to be sluggish. You've got to find ways to balance both those elements of your football team to be able to be successful. And that's what Oregon I've always seen is lacking. They just lack the other side of that. And if they can find a way to blend a toughness mentality where they can be physical in a football game, or they can be flashy and they can win both ways, then they'll finally have fully become a team that can compete for a title consistently.
Right. Well, it'll be fascinating to watch, but never make a 10-year bet for $1 million about the Oregon Ducks.
I don't think the guy's actually paid up our buddy yet.
Yep. But it is what it is. We're coming up on the 10-year mark on that bet.